Even one down the sideline, and he's got Cass over the top. Big side, down the sideline. Touchdown. His signature move and his signature performance. Allen, big ball one more time. 58 yards this time.
You're listening to the Bruin Bible. This is your host, Will Decker, bringing you UCLA football content all throughout the year for LA Football Network.
What's up, Bruin Bible listeners? This is your host, Will Decker. Wanted to reach out and say thank you guys for all the listens, all the love. We see it on social media. We see it on YouTube. It has been sensational. And we want to encourage you guys, if you guys are enjoying the podcast and liking it, that you guys subscribe and like it, whether it's on YouTube on our UCLA LAFB channel or the Bruin Bible, to subscribe either through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, however you guys listen and react to it, because it's going to allow us to do much greater things in the future. We're creators. We want to be giving the best Bruins content to all of our UCLA listeners. The only way we can do that is if we have a fan base that is locked in and helping us out. So we appreciate you guys. We love you guys. If you guys have been liking it, please help us out with a like and subscribe. What is up, sunny Los Angeles, 1090, ESPN, the mightier, Will Decker, your host, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the madman to my right. It is a Friday afternoon here, and we got UCLA football coming back tomorrow, madman. It's going to be a lot of fun. We are very, very excited to get back on the field. You know, last week was a little disappointing. Doesn't mean we can't right the ship this week against Arizona State at home in the Rose Bowl. How are we doing on this fine Friday afternoon, my man?
Doing well, brother. Always great to see you. And we got Bruin football tomorrow. I'm sorry to see and hear that you're not 100%, but ladies and gentlemen, even 50% of Will Decker is better than 100% of most humans. So it's a pleasure to have you here, and hope you get some rest later today and this weekend as well.
Man, well, sincerely appreciate it, guys. If you can hear something in my voice, it's because I am very sick right now. Got a little bit of the flu. Thankfully, we can do this on Zoom, which makes it a lot easier for us moving forward. But madman, let's dive right into it, man. Arizona State, this is a team that has a first-year head coach that I actually have a personal connection to. Kenny Dillingham was actually my high school's outside linebackers coach for the freshman team and has kind of rose his way on a unlikely journey. This is a guy that graduated from Arizona State, and we saw what he did last year in kind of revitalizing Bo Nix's career up in Oregon. He was doing some great things at Auburn, and he gets his dream job. He gets to come home and be the coach of his alma mater at ASU at the tender age of 32. It's a very young age for someone to kind of get ahead of the program. It hasn't been a fairy tale this season for him, madman. They are 2-7 right now, which is a tough break. 1-5 in the Pac-12. They're coming off of their biggest trouncing of the season, a 55-3 loss to Utah and Kyle Whittingham's team. It's a tough first year. They have a lot of similar things that we have, where it's been a lot of injuries to the quarterback room, a lot of inconsistencies, a lot of players transferring out. But what has been your overall interpretation of ASU and, maybe that they're moving the needle a little further when it comes to next year and the years beyond for Arizona State?
Well, Will, it's a great question, and it's obviously a tough first year. Kenny Dillingham has been handed a pretty tough set of cards, considering all of the challenges that Arizona State has had with the NCAA the last couple of years under Herm Edwards. The one thing that's so ironic, Will, and it's kind of the circle of life in this game in many ways, sort of the Lion King moment, is if we recall, Dante Moore really opened the door back up for his recruiting and allowed sort of Chip Kelly to get involved and build that relationship after Kenny Dillingham departed as offensive coordinator of Oregon and took the head coaching job at Arizona State. If folks recall, Dante was very firmly in the Oregon camp, and it was really a result of his relationship and his belief in the intelligence and the growth of Kenny Dillingham. So it just tells you how respected he is, even with the top most young players. I think he's got a very bright future ahead of him, both in terms of from a play calling standpoint, as well as from a recruiting standpoint. Well, about a month and a half ago, Arizona State, very deeply undermanned, really no quarterback to speak of, went in and played USC, who was undefeated, number 6 at the time, and was within one score going into the fourth quarter of that game. Actually had the ball down 6 at around midfield at the start of the fourth quarter. And Kenny Dillingham just coached his tail off when it came to setting up matchups, when it came to trick plays. So you're already seeing the flashes, Will, of what he's capable of doing. It's just a matter of fans kind of being a little bit patient, letting him kind of build that roster out over the next 2 years. And then I think Arizona State's really going to have something, especially given conference realignment and them moving to the Big 12. The Big 12 feels very wide open, Will, in terms of opportunities to really grow within that conference now with the departures of Oklahoma and Texas. So even though this year has been rough, I think there's a lot to look forward to for Arizona State.
And we've saw the commitments. They got Jaden Rashada, who was a top 100 quarterback commitment, who was previously committed to the University of Florida. He was doing okay. He had started, he had 3 touchdowns and 1 interception, got hurt, so he is out for the year. They've had guys like Drew Pine, the Notre Dame transfer, come in there. He's been knocked out. He hasn't been the same as with his injuries. So they've gone back to a guy that we're familiar with, that we played actually last year, Trenton Bourguet. He got knocked out of last week's game too, but he is coming back this week. He's expected to play. 63.3% completion rate for Bourguet in Arizona State this week. And it got me thinking, Madman, like this team, this is kind of the perfect game for UCLA to get their defense back on track. This is a team that's 103rd in total offense. There's just a lot of uncharacteristic like plays for UCLA in last week's game against Arizona. 11 of 16 they allowed on third downs for Arizona to convert. The pass rush was there at times, then it just kind of faded at the end of the game. This is a team that, I'm looking forward to seeing how they respond, if you will, in this game against Arizona State with 3 big games left on the schedule. You win these 3 games, man, you can at least go to some decent of a bowl game. What are your thoughts on the defense bouncing back against a team that is really struggling to find its identity offensively?
I agree with you, Will. I couldn't sort of have said it better myself in that it was very uncharacteristic last week. We had talked about it in detail about both sides of the ball kind of losing the line of scrimmage. And we've been sort of used to that in some of these bigger games on the offensive side, given the growth still necessary for this offensive line. But it was very surprising to see that front 7 get moved around a little bit. And I thought the 11 for 16 was a very key stat. Fafita's short passing game. And again, Arizona kind of ran horizontally to find a crease to then kind of one cut and go, put your cleats in the dirt, and then really go vertically. I think all of those matchups sort of changed this week with Arizona State. Cam Scatterbo is a terrific running back, but he's a very north and south kind of guy. He's a bruiser. It reminds me a little bit of Toby Gerhardt from back in the day, just kind of a big kid, bruiser. But I think that also matches up very well with this front 7 with UCLA. And I think the combination of that with Arizona State not knowing what their quarterback situation is going to be, Will, collectively last week against Utah, they were 8 for 29 passing. So, there's a lot of question marks. It's going to look like they're going to be very one-dimensional in a lot of ways. And so I think this is the perfect get-well game for UCLA, both on the field in terms of reestablishing their identity, feel like they're going to get back to the winning ways, but also in terms of cohesion, in terms of that locker room. You and I talked about it, Will. That word disunity popped up last week. So I think this is kind of an ideal opponent to sort of salvage, solidify, and then get ready next week for the Victory Bell game.
Yeah, Victory Bell game on the horizon, folks. So USC right around the corner. We want to make sure we get right for that. If we could just beat USC, there's at least something to salvage with this season. It's still a pretty good bowl game out there for UCLA to attempt to go to. Let's talk about a guy that I think we talk about a lot, but, is somebody that is like playing like Superman is the way that I look at it. This guy has risen back. He famously had to miss 2 years of his college career for not being medically cleared by a doctor. He came into this year saying, I want to have 15 sacks and lead the nation in sacks, and it's a huge statement. It's a big statement where we're like, we love this guy. I don't know if he can get there. But as it stands through 9 games, Madman, Tuikolovatu has 11 sacks and is outplaying, maybe even his expectations coming into this with 3 games left and a likely bowl game there as well for UCLA. Can we just talk about how impressive this young man has been for the University of UCLA? Because Tuikolovatu do not grow on trees, and we may be seeing one of the best edge rushers this university's ever had. I think we got to talk about this guy.
Will, I'm so happy you brought this up, Will, and so spot on in terms of really shining more light on Tuikolovatu. I think he's got 11 sacks. You and I talked about it. We talk about him every week, and yet it still feels like he's the most underrated player in America. And I think when I think about this, why last week's loss was particularly painful is I really saw a world this year when you look at the landscape of college football. If UCLA was able to pull off last week and still stay in this conference race, I firmly believe Leatu would have transformed into a Heisman candidate. When you look at the state of quarterbacks right now in college football, Caleb has dipped. Obviously, Bo Nix is kind of doing his thing, but hasn't had that signature game. Penix went crazy against Oregon, but then he has also dipped. So no one has really grabbed this Heisman race by the horns. There's a lot of conversation potentially about Marvin Harrison Jr., but he last week only had 25 receiving yards. He's only 9th in the country in receiving yards itself. Hard to sort of be a Heisman candidate as a wide receiver in that regard. J.J. McCarthy has gotten some love, but there's all kinds of questions now about Michigan and the sign stealing and how legitimate their schedule is. That's all to say it's been a very wide open Heisman race. And when you look at who has truly been one of the most outstanding players in all of college football, it has been Leatu. He reminds me a lot in terms of season, that Ndamukong Suh run at Nebraska. When Ndamukong Suh finished top 5 Heisman, Nebraska got to that Big 12 championship game. I think Leatu is putting together that level of season. When you look at this, Will, 11 sacks, 3 games left, the bowl game left, and at the rate he's going in terms of sacks per game, he's sort of sitting right at around, over 1 a game, getting closer to 1.5. If he averages 1.5 sacks per game over his final 4, you're talking about a 17-sack season in college football. I mean, forget about just where he stacks up in the history of UCLA football. You have to start now talking about this as being one of the great defensive seasons in the history of college football, certainly in the last 25 to 30 years. So cannot say enough about Leatu. And then when you overlay that on the fact that he didn't play football for 2 years, there was a conversation about whether he would ever play again, whether he would retire, 15 months ago. It just makes it all the more staggering. He is no question about it, a lottery pick here in the NFL. I think he's going to be a top 10 pick and can completely transform the trajectory of an NFL team moving forward. Such a tremendous ambassador for UCLA, such a tremendous ambassador for the game. And he's going to be deeply, deeply missed for the Bruins. But let's really enjoy him while we can. This is, the second to last home game of Leatu-Latu's career, most likely at UCLA. So let's really enjoy this guy. He's improved even from last year to this year. Will, you and I have talked about that north-south rushing ability last year and just getting so much more agile this year. He came in, he called his shot. He kind of went Muhammad Ali. He went Babe Ruth. He said, I'm going for 15 sacks. You and I kind of blushed a little bit about, that being quite an audacious goal. And it looks like he is going to not just meet it, but exceed it. So cannot have enough superlatives about Leatu-Latu, Will.
He's been outstanding, and he's a huge reason why UCLA is third in the nation out of 130 teams in team sacks. He had a sack and a half, 3 tackles for a loss against Arizona last week. So week after week, you could just hang your hat that Leatu-Latu is going to give his best effort for UCLA and make some serious plays out there in the football field. Quarterback positions kind of up in the air this week. We had some serious injuries in the game in Tucson last weekend. I'm actually shocked Ethan Garbers is going to be playing this week. It appeared an ankle injury for him and got helped off the field. And you're going, oh, man, this looks season ending. He's back at practice 3 days later. And I just want to say how tough of a kid Ethan Garbers is. UCLA fans, I think, have been very hard on Garbers. And I just want to say this guy is tough as nails. To do what he did to come back and play against Stanford when he lost the locker room, he lost the starting position, it shows that he's willing to stay and fight. And I think that's one of the better qualities of today's youth, with Ethan Garbers out there, that he went out, repped UCLA, had his number called and made some plays for Stanford and some of the other wins against Colorado as well. So Garbers is going to have a chance to start. He was practicing this week. Dante Moore seriously concussed on the field against Arizona, but he's back practicing this week, apparently cleared to play. And then we got Collin Schlee. Collin Schlee, we saw at the end of the game kind of give UCLA, some spark on offense with his legs. I'm still a little, questioning his passing, motion and how he's able to move the football through the air. But 3 guys, man, we can talk about who you think is going to go out there, who's the right position for UCLA to put out there for Who is the guy you're looking forward to starting this game and maybe the rest of the season for UCLA?
Will, it's such a great question. You've been on fire today, with the flu game here. You're giving me Jordan 38, 7, and 6 against Utah with all the great questions despite the flu. I think for me, Will, it comes down to where is Dante Moore health-wise? It's one thing to kind of be cleared. It's another thing to be precautionary. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the approach Chip takes with Dante Moore and maybe adding a layer of conservatism to what the doctors are saying potentially, given how young he is, given the fact that he's gotten so beaten up over the course of this season and that he's still growing into his body. Having said that, if he does sort of feel comfortable enough in the doctor's assessment of Dante Moore, I really think it benefits UCLA the most to have Dante Moore finish this season and really give him that final few games of preparation going into next season. I love Ethan Garber's Will, and he has been such a huge piece of this program the last several years. But I just don't believe Ethan Garbers can be the quarterback of a team that can go into Death Valley and win a game, that can go into the whiteout game at Penn State, win a game, that can sort of navigate the challenges and the ebbs and flows of a physical Big Ten schedule. And I think he's a terrific quarterback, but I also think given that next year is his final year of eligibility, I anticipate him at least flirting with the option of transferring and looking for the best possible situation. So having said all of that, Dante Moore is your future, and there's no need to sort of restrict the offense at this point now that the Bruins are out of the Pac-12 championship race. I think now you want to unleash Dante Moore, take the good with the good, the bad with the bad, but essentially run the system that you're planning on running next year with him as your sophomore quarterback. So to me, I would start Dante Moore if he is in fact cleared, and then really utilize Schlee in the packages for short yardage, for change of pace, for the red zone moving forward.
Yeah, I love those Schlee packages, and I completely agree. Give the kid reps. He's going to have a bear of an out-of-conference schedule next year, and don't even mention the Big Ten coming into full play for UCLA next year as well. So Dante's my guy. Man, we do this every single week. You got to give me an offensive player and a defensive player going into this game that is going to, help UCLA get back on track. If these guys play well, UCLA is going to come away with a victory. Who are those guys for you, man, coming into this week?
Will, so I got two. The first is, for me, on the offensive side, it's going to be very interesting how this game plays out. I think it's obvious that UCLA is going to be very run-heavy in this game, regardless of who starts at quarterback, just given how banged up everybody is. And at the same time, you're clearly a better team than Arizona State. And the only way Arizona State stays in this game, again, is turnovers. And when you think about how Arizona State stayed in that Washington game a couple of weeks ago, which seems still like such a staggering possibility. I mean, it still seems so incomprehensible to me, Will, that Arizona State was in that game in the fourth quarter and really in a position to potentially even win the game. They just kept turning the ball over and allowing Washington to sort of escape. But Washington's turnovers early is what kept Arizona State in this game. So I think there is going to be an element here of prioritizing protecting the football. So UCLA is really going to run with Steele, with Harden, and so forth. But I think given where the quarterbacks are health-wise, I think where you get the big play vertically in this game is not traditionally with Sturdivant or even Loya or even the tight ends. I think this is a Keegan Jones game. I think this is a game where 4 or 5 catches out of the backfield that turn into bigger plays, maybe sort of a counter in terms of some reverses, some jet sweeps. This is, I think, a game to get Keegan Jones a little bit of lather for next week against USC, particularly with the way the quarterback's health situation is. And then on the defensive side, Will, I think this is actually a Mokiao game because I think similarly, I don't know if Arizona State, after going 8 for 29, is going to have the appetite to throw as much in this game. And so I think that is going to just kind of take the pass rush out of things for a little bit, just because Arizona State is not going to throw as much, in my opinion. But I think they're going to hand it off to Scatabo. And I think this is a game where Mokiao is just going to be kind of all over the field making tackles. I expect to see him in kind of that 12 tackle area in this particular game. So I love Jones on the offensive side, kind of being almost that vertical game breaker through the air as a running back in this role. And then Mokiao on defense, really going all over the place and getting 12 tackles.
Yeah, two phenomenal picks, man. Mokiao and Keegan Jones, a guy that we've wanted to see just more of as UCLA fans. So Keegan Jones is a great pick. I think on offense for me, I'm going to go with the guy that has been the security blanket for both these quarterbacks. It really seemed like he developed some chemistry with Dante towards the end of his starting tenure. If Dante's going to get back on track at the quarterback position, I expect a lot of targets and a lot of catches to our guy Logan Loya at the starting slot wide receiver for UCLA. So Logan Loya coming in for UCLA. I think he's going to have a big game, 7-8 catches, close to 80 to 90 yards, maybe a touchdown that he's able to do there. I love Loya. I love what he brings to this football team, and I'm excited to see him kind of get back in sync with Dante as we head into maybe next year with Loya coming back. And then lastly, man, we got the defensive side of the ball. I think I'm going to go with Gabriel Murphy, man. Gabriel Murphy. What he does on the outside allows Latu to have one-on-one matchups, and the Murphy twins have been so good at that. Jay Toya was fantastic against the Arizona game, dragging these, offensive linemen for University of Arizona. So in order for Latu to do what he does best, he's going to need his line mates out there, giving him all they've got and taking the distraction away from Latu. I'm going with the Murphy twins. I'm going with Jay Toya to help out our guy Latu. Maybe get 2 more sacks at the Rose Bowl in one of his final home games out there. Madman, so much fun to be doing this with you, man. Thank you guys for putting up with my sickness out here. It has been a crazy, crazy day. We are officially out, man. We got more football content coming your guys' way. Any closing thoughts, Madman, before we turn it over?
Thriller, I think this is a get-well game, and I think it's important for us to sort of reset a little bit. This has been a tough week of UCLA football. I know a lot of conversation, a lot of emotion, but again, I think there's still tremendous opportunity here. Win, get the psyche right, get to 7-3 with an opportunity in that Victory Bell game. If you can close 9-3 and finish 6-3 in the conference, given Utah's remaining schedule, given Oregon State's remaining schedule, you're looking at a team that quite possibly can finish 3rd in the Pac-12 this year. And when you look at the fact that the winner of the Pac-12 is most likely going to be in the college football playoff, the team that finishes 2nd is most likely going to be in a New Year's Six Bowl, you're looking at potentially UCLA still with an Alamo Bowl opportunity. So the chance to kind of go to the Alamo Bowl and make a statement there, I think would be a step, a very significant step in the right direction for this program. So still so much to play for. Let's stay on train, on track, and let's go out and support this team at the Rose Bowl the next couple of weeks.
Let's do it. ESPN 1090 The Mightier. We're going to take a break. More football coming your way after the Bruin Bible here on 1090 ESPN The Mightier.